What's going on, guys, and welcome back to another video. So most of you probably know that I got to have an exclusive interview with two of the Classic developers at the beginning of this week, and I got some really good information out of them, and I pretty much got them to confirm that Classic Plus is on the way. Let's take a quick look. Everyone looks at the massive success of games like old school RuneScape, that have become super popular by implementing a permanent non-seasonal classic version of the game with consistent updates that are, basically polled and voted on by the community on a monthly or, bi-monthly basis. Basically, are there any plans to maybe do something like this with Classic going forward? Maybe called Classic Plus or, something like that.
What we're doing as a team and try to think about why we're doing it. Like, why do we have an experimental seasonal server like Season of Discovery? Why are we trying out vastly different types of raid designs and difficulties? Why are we creating brand new tier sets and trying to make classes that were vastly underrepresented more represented and enjoyable? I think we may stretch too far in terms of how we push the limits of what is acceptable within classic traditional classic design for Season of Discovery, but a lot of that's purposeful. So just without saying anything, I think people can maybe infer a lot of stuff from what we've been trying to do and all the different things that we've put forward to players, and how we consistently ask for feedback and ideas and what people are comfortable with and what people are uncomfortable with. Not everything in Season of Discovery is meant to be, a straight up banger. Like we intend for some things we obviously want everything that we put out to be amazing and received well, but it's okay if it's not. And that's a lesson for us to take forward on whatever we work on in the future. So
yeah, almost as important as finding what works is finding what doesn't. Because I think if we had gone back to November and said this is Classic Plus, I think we would have it would have had a different connotation, different way of thinking about it, and things like that. And so this is why this is our sort of test bed. This is the fertile ground to be able to kind of grow ideas for the future.
Awesome. Yeah, sounds good. I think that's what a lot of people kind of already know. So that's great to hear. Now this is starting to make a little bit more sense because of what we saw last week on Twitter. We got those surveys that were leaked talking about what we'd want to see in a Classic Plus. So in this video, let's go over that survey, go through each question, and kind of see what would fit and what wouldn't inside a Classic Plus environment. Because now that we know that Season of Discovery is basically the test bed for Classic Plus, I hope all of you are jumping on there and doing some testing. Let's help build the best Classic Plus experience we possibly can. So without further ado, guys, let's take a look at these surveys and figure out what we would want in our Classic Plus. So last week on Twitter, we got this tweet. New Classic Plus on the horizon. A survey by Blizzard has been sent out to some players as they float the idea of a new WoW Classic. The survey covers many proposed features that we'd all expect, like guild banks and new dungeons, raids, but lists more polarizing features like flying mounts and pet battles. So let's take a look. There's two different parts of the survey here available to us. We'll start with this one, and we'll take a look at what we've got going on here. So on the left side, this is going to be the feature, and then the right side is a brief description. Basically, we're going to go through each feature that they're talking about and say if we agree or disagree with that feature. So feature number 1, new or unexplored storylines and lore. Never before seen quests that are new to World of Warcraft Classic. Of course, this is an absolute no-brainer. This was one of the most popular points that were made in Season of Discovery Phase 1, right? So yeah, no-brainer there. We definitely want new and unexplored storylines and lore. New reputations and rewards. Again, why not? Of course, we're going to want that. That works very well. New/reimagined raids, revitalizing or creating new raid content within Classic era bosses, rewards, level design, etc. So this one I think new here is the the staple. We need new. Reimagining old dungeons as raids was fine for level up content, but for a true Classic Plus, I do think maybe leave those dungeons as dungeons, or use the level up raids that were created for Season of Discovery. But we definitely want some new raids. We definitely want some new dungeons, new content with new zones that are designed, right? New artwork maybe that fits into that classic universe. I think that's super important. New/future races pulled back. Introducing races from WoW's expansions to Classic era. Now, this is kind of a tricky one, and also we'll lump this one and the next one as new/future classes pulled back. So, new races and classes from future WoW expansions in era. I think this can be done, but it should be done with caution, right? Certain races can fit, maybe like high elves, but then otherwise we would need to create some new races that aren't in future expansions of WoW, maybe like ogres, maybe gnolls, maybe naga, something like that. Some of the races and classes in future expansions of WoW simply wouldn't fit in a Classic Plus environment, in my opinion. But definitely something like exploring the idea of maybe adding high elves in. That would be something that would make sense with the lore, and I'm sure there's plenty of other races we can figure out. Comment down below what races you'd like to see and, why you think they'd fit into a Classic Plus environment. Minor class changes, slight modification to class spells and abilities. This is also a no-brainer. A lot of people want Classic Plus to be just Classic with very, very minimal changes to talent trees and things like that. But I think it's kind of more important to go down a route where, every class is viable in some way. Classes aren't just meme specs. And I think that there is a way to do it that's not, completely outrageous. Like, we've gotten a lot of changes in Season of Discovery. There's definitely a little bit more of a reserved way of going about this, where the classes still feel like their old class. I personally think that they did a great job with the class design in Season of Discovery, so I'd like to see something more along those lines. Maybe not as drastic, but, we got to stay true to that classic feel, right? That's what people love, but there's no reason why Paladins shouldn't be able to tank, Boomkins shouldn't be able to DPS. They shouldn't be topping the meters, they shouldn't be one-shotting people in PvP, but they should definitely be viable in some way and bring something to the raid that other classes can't, right? I think that's super important, but let me know what you guys think about that down below. Returning player re-entry feature. Provide an easy onboarding experience for returning players, and then the next one is a new player experience. Provide an easy onboarding experience for new players. In my opinion, I wouldn't touch this. Classic has been around, vanilla has been around for a long time now, going on 20 years. And this has never hindered anyone's, it's never stopped anyone from wanting to play the game, right? I think that classic new player experience, the exploration, you really have no idea what's going on. It creates a sense of exploration, and it creates this sense of almost like you become addicted to learning and figuring out what you're doing and where you're going. Now, with that being said, I think that there's other things that can be done, right? A new player that has no idea about add-ons, they're going to level to level 8 or 9 or 10, without Questy or whatever, and then they're going to pretty much probably make a new character, which is what a lot of people did when they were younger and started playing World of Warcraft, because the questing becomes a little crazy, right? You don't really know where you're supposed to go. There's a lot of zone hopping. So maybe instead of recreating that new player experience, recreating that returning player experience, maybe we can build in some of these add-ons so they don't have to be add-ons, right? Like maybe if Questy was in the game, like in future expansions of World of Warcraft, that would enhance the new player experience greatly, but you'd still have that original experience. I personally wouldn't touch the new player experience and create a whole new entry for new players. I don't think it's useful in any way. I don't think the classic experience for new players is all that bad, aside from the fact that questing becomes a little, complicated as you level up. So maybe incorporating something like Questy would definitely help that out. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think about that down in the comments below. And then we have new group events and rewards. Of course, no brainer. Whatever you can do to get players playing together and get them new rewards, it's not going to do bad. I think anything like that is going to do really well. Ongoing class tuning and polish, continuously refining the various classes through player feedback and in-game. Yes, that is, of course, you're going to want to constantly be changing classes, tuning, polishing them up. You could polish them up as much as you want, but on launch, players are going to find crazy ways to abuse things and and just make their class do things that were not really, you weren't supposed to be able to do certain things. So I definitely think ongoing tuning and polish is definitely a good one. A guild bank. Now, a guild bank, definitely, I don't see any downside to adding guild banks to Classic Era. I think this is a plus. A collections UI, introducing a collections user interface feature to access mounts, toys, companions in Classic Era. Of course, why not? There's not that many in Classic Era. Maybe they can like make some trinkets, turn those into toys, like things like the Orb of Deception and stuff like that, that really no one uses because you have to equip them and they are a trinket on your character slot. If those were then converted into toys and you had a UI or a collections interface to be able to use those things or keybind them or put them somewhere on your bars, I think that would be way more convenient. Dual talent specialization, no-brainer for me as well. I think dual talent has worked out very well in Season of Discovery. You get a lot more tanks, a lot more healers. It's just all around a good change. I don't really see any reason to not have dual spec in the game. I always think it should have been a feature. You're out really far away from your trainers and there's, you're like, oh man, I could tank for this group, but I'd have to go back. I'd have to respec, pay gold. Just with the click of a button, being able to switch specs, throw on a different set of gear really makes it a lot easier to have more diversified classes, right? You have more tanks, more healers, more DPS. Pretty much you could fill more roles for your group, which I think is a positive change nonetheless. New future class and race combinations and new class and race combos to Classic Era, maybe like human hunters, dwarf shamans, things like that. I think it kind of makes sense. Not 100% sure on the shaman thing. I really do feel that maybe shamans and paladins should stay exclusive to the Alliance and Horde, but who am I? I'm not a developer. Really, either way, it maybe it really would be, kind of nice to have shamans and paladins stay specific to their faction, right? It kind of really ties into that classic feel, but I'm sure there's a way to fit it in as well if they did want to do that. Maybe troll druids, not talking about paladins and shamans, maybe troll druids would work. Like I said, human hunters, dwarf mages, which were originally supposed to be in the game to begin with. Things like that, definitely don't see a reason to not put those in. Improved social features, implementation of updated social systems, global chats, guilds, pre-made groups, etc. Don't really see anything wrong with this as long as we're not talking about adding in the dungeon finder. A group finder would be fine, right? Basically like the LFG bulletin board add-on, but built in game. But I definitely don't think we should be adding the dungeon finder that finds your group and teleports you to that group without you having to communicate with anybody. I think have a very strong stance on that, and in Classic Era, I do not think that should be in the game. But a system where, you can kind of say, hey, these are the dungeons I'm looking for, and people can go through a list and message you and see your gear and say, okay, Larry, I'm going to invite you, or you can join groups that way. I think that would be very beneficial. PvP honor system improvements, provide a more granular real-time PvP honor system with better progress tracking. This one I'm all for. I think the Classic Era ranking system is absolutely trash, and it's really complicated for new players to understand, even without decay. It's still really it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't feel good. I like the way honor was done in TBC Wrath and Onward Kata. It was just done so much better. You didn't feel like you were wasting any time. You didn't have to hit certain thresholds for your progress to matter. Your progress just mattered based on the time that you put in. So yeah, I definitely would rework the honor system, maybe use those other classic versions of the honor system. They worked pretty well. But let's move on to the next segment of this survey. So this one it's pretty much the same thing, just asking questions and then asking, how likely would you be able to play if this was a feature, right? It goes from on the left side, I would much less likely to play, all the way up to much more likely to play, right? So on the left, we have revamping and adding flight paths, boats, or zeppelins to Azeroth to make travel around the world more efficient. Now, this one to me, I don't really care about this, and I kind of like the way that it is with the flight paths. It actually adds a sense of accomplishment going around getting all these flight paths to make your flights shorter. I think that is, I guess I would call it a classic a classic friction aspect that I think really does add value to the game, and it adds to that exploration aspect. It makes the world feel really big. So for me, I would leave the flight paths alone, but maybe something like adding some, maybe like the Stormwind Harbor would be nice, since, Horde can walk outside of Orgrimmar and be able to get to the other continent, whereas for Alliance you have to fly up to Menethil or you have to fly down to Booty Bay. Maybe things like that would be fine, but flight paths in general, I think we leave flight paths the way that they are. What do you guys think? Adjusting the way items stack in bags to make inventory management easier. Again, another one that I just feel like it's classic friction that makes sense, and I wouldn't touch it. I'm sure there's some examples of items that definitely can be made stackable or stack better that make more sense, maybe like copper ore and stuff like that. But be very, very careful with what you touch here. Introducing in-game resources to help players find the right guild for them, like kind of like a guild finder. I guess this would be cool. I really don't see any bad aspect of this, right? The only way to find a guild is to try and read through a spamming looking for group channel that, if you're on a populated server, goes so fast that you can't really see it, so you have to download the LFG bulletin board. And again, that's for new players, to get new people into this game. It's not really a system that works, and it definitely hinders the ability to find a guild there unless you know what you're doing. Adding guild banks, yes, we already talked about this, definitely a great idea. Reducing the mana cost / increasing duration of group buff spells, Prayer of Fortitude. Yeah, I don't think this is bad either. I think that, improving the duration on these really doesn't harm the classic environment in any way. It just makes it a little bit less annoying, right? To have to keep putting, blessings out on people and things like that. Just make them a little bit longer. Maybe warrior shouts could be more than 2 minutes. That would be nice, right? Adding flying mounts to Classic Era. Absolutely not. I think flying mounts are the death of world PvP. They make you able to just get around the world too fast, right? I don't think flying mounts should exist in Classic Era, even if they redesigned the terrain to fit them into the game. I do not think Classic Era should have flying mounts. That's a big no-go from me. Adding summoning stones to dungeon / raid entrances. This makes sense only in certain scenarios, right? Maybe these stones only work in certain situations. Maybe you need to purchase a reagent to allow these stones to summon people. But what'll happen if these stones can just automatically summon people is you're going to just have people getting summoned all over the world, not even to do the dungeons, just to avoid travel. And that is something that's really important in Classic Era, and you're going to have to find a way here to avoid letting that become an exploit, right? They should be only for groups that are running that specific dungeon, and maybe a reagent is required to use that stone, and these summoning stones then have a massive cooldown of like an hour or two, so someone can't just sit there summoning people across the entire world. Adding chrono boons to safely store world buffs. Of course, this has worked out great. I think this should have been in from day one. Increasing the size of the quest log. Now, this is a tricky one. I don't think we should have like a 50 quest log. Maybe 25 would be fine, but I think part of Classic is kind of figuring out what quests you want to pick up and work on. If you just have a massive quest log of 50 quests, you start to become, feel very detached from what you're doing. So I think that this could work, but not drastically, right? Maybe going from 20 to 25 would be okay, maybe to 30, but no more than that, in my opinion. Adding the customizable HUD from later expansions so players can customize their HUD without requiring add-ons. Definitely think that's a great idea. I'm not a big retail player, but when I did play Dragonflight, I loved the fact that you don't really need LVUI or, dominoes or bartender or shadow unit frames. They did a really good job on the UI, right? You're able to customize it exactly how you want, make things bigger, make things smaller, move them around. I think that'd be really beneficial to a lot of people who are kind of against using add-ons, because we all know the classic interface is kind of clunky, right? Introduce a new way to help players find groups for dungeons and elite quests. Like I was talking about earlier, the group finder, not the dungeon finder. We don't want to be teleported anywhere. We want to still be able to interact with players. We just want like a bulletin board, basically just like the add-on that's built into the interface to help you find groups for elite quests and other dungeons and things like that. Like in later versions of Warcraft, if you're on an elite quest or a group quest, you get that little dungeon, group finder eye next to the quest where you can click on it and see everyone else who's looking to do that quest as well. That would be extremely beneficial in Classic Era. Making mail delivery between players instant. Yes, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. So there we have it. That's a lot of information, right? And it's really interesting to know that Season of Discovery is now confirmed to basically be the test bed for Classic Plus. Everyone kind of speculated this for a long time, but now we really have confirmation that that's what's happening. I can't believe that I got that information out of them in the interview. And I don't know about you, but I'm really, really excited And please just don't add flying mounts to Classic Plus. Please don't do that. That's the one thing that, like, if I had to pick one thing on all of these lists that would be game breaking, it's that. No flying mounts. But other than that, I'm really excited. Let me know what you guys think about all this down in the comments below. I'm really, really curious to hear everyone's take on it. So if you guys enjoyed this video, hit that like button. It really does help me out. We just passed 10,000 subscribers. I can't thank you guys enough for the support. I started this channel as a passion project, and it became like something so awesome for me, and I'm excited. I've met so many awesome people. I'm getting to talk with the devs, the Classic community, all the streamers, all the content creators have just been so welcoming and nice. So I want to thank you all for that. I really appreciate it. And you know what? If you want to come hang out with me live, I stream on Twitch at twitch.tv/hammerdance. Link in the description below. And yeah, that's pretty much it, guys. So thank you all so much for watching and listening in. I'll see you all in the next one.